Hello and welcome to another coaches panel discussion. Today, the topic of conversation is going to revolve around the technical aspect of goalkeeper training. And today we are very, very fortunate enough to have two of my good friends and goalkeeper coaches. And I am really excited to get started. And we have one of our regulars back in Mr. Steve Rerick. Steve is the goalkeeper coach locally here in Pittsburgh for the Slippery Rock men's soccer team. He's been there for the past 2 years, and this upcoming year will be his third. Steve, welcome, sir.
Thank you, sir. Happy to be back.
Excellent. Love having you, man. Love having you. And also we have with us, lucky and fortunate enough here to have Jon Busch. Jon has been an MLS veteran, or was an MLS veteran, for 21 years. He played with the Columbus Crew, the Chicago Fire, San Jose Earthquakes. He was the 2008 MLS Goalkeeper of the Year. He's number 4 in MLS history with career shutouts. He's represented the United States at both the senior and youth levels. He's the owner of what you see here on the screen, High Performance Goalkeeping. Please welcome Mr. Jon Busch. Jon, how you doing, sir?
Good, Eric. How you doing today, buddy? Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. We're going to get right into it, as I say. So, Jon, do me a favor, man. For those that don't know, can you just give a very 10,000-foot definition for the technical aspect of goalkeeping, please?
For me, anyway, when I think of technical, I think, everything from their starting position and what that looks like to underhand scooping or basket catching to, overhand or, I just call it overhand catching to, collapse diving to high balls to dealing with crosses to distribution. Basically how you do things, I guess, is the best way.
Yeah.
For me, I call it the foundation of goalkeeping.
Yeah, and it's like with any pyramid, the foundation to me is the most important part. And I know that's debatable, and we're not going to get into that debate today, but yeah. I'm a big fan of technical training and every day doing a little bit of something to, repeat in a different way what you're doing daily to just really cement those skills. Jon, when do you start that? At what age do goalkeepers get introduced to that technical training?
I think, right away for me, I know that it was the way, I really didn't have goalie coaches when I was young. So I'd like to say it was the way it was back then, but it wasn't. But it's the way I like to do things now with my goalkeepers, especially when they're real young. Teach them how to dive correctly. Teach them the proper starting position. Teach them how to catch a high ball above their head, bringing their knee up, all that stuff that, the three of us know. But you have to kind of break it down for them to, I call it painting the picture, right? Because for me, I don't like to see goalkeepers just be put into these live environments where they're just flying around doing all kinds of crazy things. I want to paint the picture in their minds in a controlled environment. So then when we do go live, they don't have to think about it. This is what a low collapse dive looks like. This is what a medium collapse dive looks like. This is, when I'm boxing across because I'm getting pressured, this is what it looks like. I don't have to think about it. All right. And so for me, I start them really early, just to think about it. And I want them to discuss it as well. It's for me, I always tease my young kids in our facility of, it's school for goalkeeping, and I want them to discuss, what's the power step? What's it look like? How's our body shape? Because they're going to learn by discussing it. They're going to learn by watching their buddies do it. And it's, for me, it's got to be interactive in that capacity.
Yeah. Steve, regarding like Jon was talking about earlier, the better, do you think that's something that kids sign up for individually, or is that something that from a holistic standpoint, everyone gets that training early on in their foundation age to see who's potentially interested in that and pursuing that goalkeeper position?
I think that it's something that, it would be beneficial, whoever's interested in being a goalkeeper, because, like the three of us now, it takes a special breed to go and hop in goal and, be the one that wants to try and keep the ball out of the net and everything. But, very similar to what Jon said, I think that you have to start with that because you have your set position. If you don't have a kid that knows how to properly catch a ball, all it takes is one good toe poke from a 10 or an 11-year-old, and the ball slips through their hand, bops them in the face, and now they never want to go in goal again. So I think you have to kind of start from those foundation elements and work your way up from there. the technical pieces that you work on, I think, depend on different ages. But I think that if you're just getting into goalkeeping, you have to focus on those foundational elements of, what your set position is, how to catch a ball, and, what handling to use in different situations based on the height of the ball.
Yeah, I get when working with townships and the younger academy levels, I get the question a lot, when do you start? And my answer back to them is, when do you introduce a goal and when do you hand off gloves and a penny to tell someone to go in goal?
Yeah.
Because when you are introducing that aspect of the game, you're basically putting someone in there who knows nothing, and they just stand on their line and they put in their time, their half a season, right? And then at the end of the season, it's who liked it, who wants to do it again. And I'm not sure I support that. I think the team training, when you're starting at that younger ages and you have a goal and there is a goalkeeper, do it in a team environment. Everyone takes that 30-minute introductory to it. Just teach them the set. Teach them the contour catch and a scoop. Teach them the little basic things, John, that you were mentioning, Steve, yourself, that just is needed out of necessity. Because if they don't have it, how do you expect them to succeed and want to go back at those younger ages when a goal is introduced? So I struggle with that, and I have that conversation with a lot of townships in regards to when we should start that training.
Exactly. And off of that, one of the worst case scenario is the kid doesn't want to go back in goal, but then he goes out to be a forward. And now he has that little bit of goalkeeping knowledge of, maybe this is what the goalie is looking for in this situation. It kind of helps on the reverse side of it, not just being a goalie at that point as well.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I agree. John, what aspects do you work on? Let's stay with the academy level goalkeepers. What's like the first few things that you're introducing to the keepers and you're educating them on?
For me, it's always obviously once you talk about the starting position, set position, feet shoulder width apart, knees slightly bent, all that stuff, hands in front of your body. Then for me, I get into, an underhand catch, what it may look like, overhand catch, that sort of thing. Then into collapse diving. We have ideas, we have thoughts, but it's not black and white. For instance, when you're scooping, I can teach them, keep their legs apart, just bend their knees, get their behinds down. Sometimes we talk about dropping a knee, getting it behind the ball, especially if you're playing on a turf field that's wet and things like that. Things start to get wet and skip a little bit more. My thought process is there's not 100% right or wrong when we do this, because, again, you look at a house, right? And I always base it on a house. Every house has the same foundation, right? Cement bricks started. And that's the same with a goalkeeper. You start with that foundation, but then depending on him or her and depending on their level and their size and all that stuff, houses are different sizes. Some have two bedrooms, some have 4 bedrooms, and this is exactly the way I explain it to my goalkeepers. Everybody's going to have a foundation that's very similar, and then we're going to have a little bit different kind of goalkeepers depending on size and quickness and everything that goes into it. So for me, I always want to give them a lot of ideas on how to do things, how to scoop a ball, maybe on this one I could just bend my knees and get down. Oh, on this one I'm on turf, it's wet, the ball's moving. Maybe I want to drop a knee behind it. Maybe I want to forward smother. So I want to put as many kind of golf clubs in their bag.
I love that quote. As
possible for them to now pull out what they think in each situation. Again, talk about distribution, right? Everybody wants to talk about the sidewinder, right? The sidewinder is beautiful. It's sexy. Yeah, that's awesome, but there's a time and a place for the sidewinder. Just like there's a time and a place for a drop kick. There's a time and a place to play out of the back. There's a time and a place to play off the ground. All right. Now, yes, that gets a little bit into the tactical side of things, when to do stuff, but it's also the technical side of, do you have all those golf clubs in your bag? And can you do that when the right time is?
And I love that, John. And I think part of it too is like we can teach the technique all we want, but if they're not applying it in the proper moment, and the new thing now that I see, you just mentioned the sidewinder, the half ball, or the side volley, the K-save. How many times have I seen in the last 2 years where someone's shooting the ball 8 yards out and the goalkeeper's already in a K split position, and it's just out of reach? They're not practicing the proper technique for the right situation. And
Yeah,
I'm a big
absolutely.
believer in failure. I'm a big
Yeah.
believer in learning from failure. And I think
Yeah.
if kids can actually do that, and it's difficult, it takes the
Yeah.
right communication style to say,
Mhm.
hey,
Mhm.
we just messed up. Let's learn from it. And it takes a brave individual at a younger age to accept that and say, okay, let's
Yeah.
learn from it, as opposed
Yeah.
to emotionally they're discredited, they're out of there, they don't want to have anything to do with it, the gloves are off, and they storm off the field.
Yeah.
But that's the right time to address it and talk about it while it's fresh in their mind. They understand that, here's what I did, here's what I didn't do, and here's what I'm going to do next time to make sure it doesn't happen again. And the more
Yeah.
repetitions you get in that environment, I think the better.
Yeah. No, absolutely. There's again, that's a perfect example of the case. I call it the De Gea. I got the De Gea and I got the Schmeichel.
Fact.
Those are my two. Those are my breakaways. So I just put names to them. But
Right.
you're absolutely right. I mean, like, think about when you and I grew up. Now, Steve's a little bit younger, he looks like, than us. But when you and I grew up, it was either stand up or go down on a breakaway. Right? You either stood up and you closed the space and you tried to react to a shot. And maybe occasionally you made a foot save. Or it was hit too long and you're going down, right? Now, those are still two options.
Agreed.
But now you have the De Gea, you have the K-Save, you have the Schmeichel, as I like to call them. You have all these other options. But again, you have to know when to use each one. And if you don't, like you said, and you see it all the time on TV when we're watching games, like,
Yes.
I've even seen De Gea do it, he does it at the wrong time. And now, like you said, if you're too far away and you drop a knee, you're sitting duck and you're opening up too much of the goal. So, yes, let's give these young goalkeepers all these different possibilities and tools, but let's also teach them when and why.
Yeah. And I think we're
because
getting a lot of
they don't know.
Agree, 100% agree with that. And we're going to get to video in a little bit, because I want to implement how that impacts technical training on the training pitch in addition to game film. So I think you can do stuff on the practice field all day. You put yourself under the pressure of an actual game situation in the 80th minute, technique goes out the window sometimes.
Absolutely.
And we'll get to that in a moment. So I think video plays a big part in understanding that, because you can say, I did it. No, you didn't. You made the save, but the technique was gone, man. And again, we'll get back to that. You mentioned De Gea and the K-Save and getting into all there. You're seeing a lot of futsal influence in the outdoor game now. And Steve, do you see at the academy level the futsal being played regularly, and do you see it difficult to manage the goalkeepers when they come off the futsal court and onto the outdoor pitch, that there are some habits that you need to correct?
Yeah, one of the big things is now in today's game, you see a lot of goalies that play with their feet, and sometimes in futsal, they're not diving necessarily for the ball, trying to go hands the ball or something along those lines. It's, oh, can I lunge and do a split save and just get a foot to it? And it's technically, like you said, in a game, technically it's not correct, but they made the save, so they're thrilled with it. And going and, like you mentioned, that environment of, hey, you made the save, but why did you decide to make, why did you go at that save as opposed to going hands to your ball, like going hands to the ball, or, just kind of going and exploring that. But you do start to see a lot more futsal, especially goalies in one-on-one situations, going out and really just either trying to slide tackle or go into a split save, kick the ball away, something like that, and as opposed to being brave, going down, getting your body behind it, and going hands to the ball.
It's interesting, Steve. An example of what you just said. Everyone's happy he made the save except for one person, the goalkeeper coach.
Yep.
Right? You know what I mean? It's the goalkeeper coach that pulls. And you know who's giving all the positive reinforcement, who decides on the playing time? The head coach. And I think sometimes that communication with head coach to GK coach and what they're expecting out of their GKs is incredibly important for the psyche and understanding of what's right and what's wrong when it comes to goalkeeping in game situations. I see that confusion from communication all the time.
Exactly. And one of the important points that I make with my college goalies is, I'll ask them why they decided to make a save, even if it is the right technique, because I think that it's crucial to understand, the thought process behind making each save, why you made the save, even if it is the correct one. Understand why you made it, as opposed to, oh, well, I just kind of guessed at it. No, I did a side dive, or I went into a K save because, they were within that 1 to 2 yards and I could go into it properly, as opposed to, I don't know.
Yeah, well, you get that a lot too, don't you?
Yeah.
It's a good. I mean, honestly, I love those moments because if you can get someone to ask themselves why, and then continuously ask that, they'll get to the root. They're just not thinking deep enough. You know what I mean? So I think keep asking. I love what you just said because I get that all the time as well. Like, must be practicing all the time, so it's just a natural thing, coach. Well, why? Well, why? Well, and it gets them to a point where like, oh, all right, I kind of get it, and it does. It resonates. It resonates.
Yeah.
I'm going to put this slide back up, guys, the technical aspect here, the technical abilities. And I'd like you guys to do me a favor and just speak to the ones that really kind of pop off the screen for you. And we're starting to get older in our conversation here. We started out the academy, U10, U12 levels. We're slowly starting to get into the 16 and college age. When do you start to focus on certain things over others? Because also all of a sudden some things become just they become so ingrained that they're natural now. You know what I mean? Like our basic set position. When do you start to transition out of that? And now that's known commodity, and you start to transition into other things. And you're looking at 7 bullet points here. John, if I could start with you, what do you see as the transition from what to what at that age around 15 to 17?
I mean, I think, for me, it's, especially here because I deal with DA, I deal with non-DA, I deal with college kids, so, the age is a little bit of something to do with it where you can go a little bit more, hey, we're going more tactical, and I want you to think, I want you to think about the situations and play your way through things. But I can also do that a little bit with some of my young kids, right? Like for instance, I've got a, I think he just turned 13. I think he's it might be 14 now. On our DA, little kid Ryan. And for the last 2 years, like technically he is fantastic. He's a little guy, right? And I love little guys, but he's good. But what I also like about him is I call it a soccer brain. He has a soccer brain. We can talk to him about, hey, where's your 2? Where's your 4? Where's your starting position depending on where our back line is, right? And sometimes you guys know as well as I do, some of that stuff some of your older kids may not even understand.
Yeah.
But again, for me, a lot of it is, let's say starting positions, right? Where's our back line? How high are we playing? What's comfortable for you, right? Because Steve being younger, he may be able to cover more distance than you and I are, right? So his starting position might be higher, right? You and I might be sitting there. I mean, I'm 43 years old now. I can't cover much space. So I might sit a little bit deeper.
Right.
And so those are the discussions that we start getting into, around those ages, like you said. For me, it might be a little bit earlier when I have certain goalkeepers that I can have those conversations with. So I don't know if it's 100% an age group, Eric, if that makes sense. I think it's, per goalkeeper, but yeah, those are more the conversations. Okay. You now understand how to dive, and you now understand, and we'll still go over that. We'll still always start with that.
Yes.
Because I always want to paint that picture. I never want to just be like, hey, we're just going to start with, on level 3 when we need to start on level 1 every session to get yourself going. I mean, I was the same way as a player. I always wanted to, no matter what we were getting into, I wanted to paint the picture of what a dive looked like, what a catch looked like, all that. Now, we speed it up because our body knows what we're talking about. And then we get into, a little bit more advanced, a little bit quicker training sessions faster with the older, more advanced goalkeepers. But I think it's those kind of situations where you start having more discussions, right? Because there's a lot of gray areas as a goalkeeper. It's not black and white. Yes, how we would like you to dive and how we would like you to jump and all that stuff that we start when we're real young. Yeah, that's a little bit more black and white. But now all of a sudden you start adding bodies in front of you. You start adding defenders. You start adding, crosses that now are whipped in. They're low. They're 5, 6, 7 yards out. You got defenders running in. Can I cut it off? The cutback ball, things like that. You have all these other things that now we add into it. So those for me are the gray conversations.
I love that because what you were saying, and you're right. We're focused on the technical piece today, but the overlapping in the gray areas when the the elements of development start to overlap, technical and tactical, when they overlap. Then you add in the physical element. You said you have a smaller GK. You know, you probably can move around a lot better, and a lot of other bigger goalies per se. He's probably better with his feet, so there's probably some more interaction with him with being the 11th player, so to speak, compared to the other person. And I think when you start to mix and match those developmental categories, that draws in amazing conversation, because you're really starting to say, if I do this right, the team from a tactical standpoint should be able to focus on this strategy. And I think by taking the understandings of what each goalkeeper brings to the table for that team, there's a lot that goes into that decision-making and who your starting GK is for that squad. And I love those coaching conversations around like what different players bring to the table.
Because even like, not to jump back, but even like with the kid Ryan, you know, we went from last year was his first year on a big size goal, right? So we took him from a small goal to a big goal, right? So now, of course, everything, you know, pretty much up top is going in right now, you know, and I know at times the coaches I said, look, I'm not worried about it.
I agree.
Give me a year. Give me a year. He's going to grow. He'll get settled in. Right now, he's getting comfortable moving his angles into bigger angles because it's a bigger goal.
Right.
And so, you know, those are the conversations I had with Ryan throughout the year, you know, because at times he's a very good goalkeeper, and he's a good athlete, and he's a competitive athlete. So there were times where he got a little bit frustrated with himself just because he's on a bigger goal.
Sure.
And I would just put my arm around him and say to him, look, I'm not concerned about it. And if I'm not concerned about it as your goalkeeper coach, don't worry about it.
It's funny, man, because I love what you say, because that brings in the whole argument. What's more important, the developmental technique or the wins? And I think you see a lot of coaches, John, you know this, hopefully, and I think Steve would do. They make those wrong decisions because they want to win now. And now he's 12, 13 years old. And I really think that sometimes the folks that don't have those categories, don't have those characteristics the head coach is looking for. You know, it really retards their growth, I think. And I think, John, I love how you said that. Like, it doesn't bother me a bit. You know, and it might bother 10 other people on the field, and a goalkeeper and a coach, a head coach. But I love how you said no. It's and if you can have that communication with the head coach about, you know, don't worry about it now, because it's gonna pay big dividends in the future. I love that part.
Look, when you get to Steve's level, when you're in college and when you're a pro, now that's if you're getting paid to play and you're letting goals in. Now we got an issue. Now we have an issue, right? Or even in college, like, okay, there's probably going to be a change if you're giving up goals. But when they're 12, 13, 14, let them develop. Let them, you know, let them try things. Let them fail. You know, how many times have we heard? I'm sure you guys have heard it.
I love it.
How many times goalkeeper comes out for a cross, misses it, goes over their head, and the first thing the coach says is, stay on your line, don't ever come off again.
Yes.
How many times have we heard that?
Yep.
Right? Like, well, how are they supposed to develop?
Yeah. And the other thing too is the percentage that I love. I throw out this all the time, and we work on this every day too. And I don't care what session we're doing, is footwork. You know, 75, 80% of the touches at the higher levels is all with the feet, and I think that shocks a lot of people. So, Steve, when you're running an academy session, what's your footwork percentage when working with your goalkeepers? When do you introduce it? Do you let the field player coach take care of that? How do you address it?
Absolutely. And the sessions that I ran last week, I went in immediately. The first thing that I did was pull out the ladder, and you go and you start working footwork into it from there. And then, you know, my warm up, you introduce, you know, the sidewalls, so a little bit of the technical aspect of it, and then you have them with the 1-2 touch passing on the ground, taking the touch with their inside of the foot across their body, same foot. You know, I think that, you know, as everyone keeps throwing around the term the modern goalkeeper, you have to kind of play as that 11th field player. So I think that as goalie coaches, it's crucial for us to also implement that in our sessions. So it's coming from two different angles, as opposed to, all right, well, we'll just focus on, you know, catching the ball and everything with shots coming at us. That's only half the game, if not less now. You know, a lot of teams, they'll go and they'll swing the ball out of the back. So you have to be able to be comfortable with your feet and, you know, hit the proper passes, be able to take your first touch and get it out from underneath your body in those kind of situations. So I think it's crucial for goalie coaches to start that.
Yeah, and it's funny, man. I mean, I'm going to date myself and John here, but You know, there was the Steve, you probably don't even remember when you couldn't pass the ball back to the goalie and the goalie could pick it up. The goalie they were able to pick it up, you know, and it was one of those things that we didn't have to use our feet. We had hands. Why would we put in? They made the change that goalkeepers couldn't have pass backs and pick it up. And then, you know, I think that happened in the 90s, John, ballpark figure.
Yeah, somewhere in there. Steve was probably just born then.
Right? So now all of a sudden, what I'm going is the modern game is basically Steve's generation who never even knew what that back pass rule when you could pick it up even meant. You know, I grew up my entire life being able to do that. And then all of a sudden, I'm now have to enforce to use my feet. Yeah. It was a big change for a lot of goalkeepers. And I think that modern game now is really where that transition comes from with the goalkeepers in particular, is that rule being, you know, changed and it was a dramatic change on a global scale. That wasn't just locally. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Let's get into video analysis. I love the usage of video, and I want to know, before we get to the pro game, I want to jumpstart in the college game. Steve, do you use video analysis for not only game situations when you're reviewing it with your goalkeepers, but do you also use it in training?
So that is something that, you know, recently, since I just kind of started to get into coaching, you know, I think it's crucial to have it for games where you can go back and look at each of your mistakes and everything like that. But even last year, I started to pull out, you know, some more of the in training video. And I think that helped out my goalies tremendously, that I can go and show them, hey, you know, even something as simple as your set position, you know, if your feet are getting spread too far apart, or you can show them from behind the goal what angle they're taking for a shot. You know, if they're repeatedly doing something wrong in training, you can talk to them about it. You can talk to them about it. They may not get that just by having the conversation. So them being able to see that is crucial. You need to have, in my opinion, in-session video as well as in-game. You know, the only thing is, can you afford to do it? That's the only thing. So that if you can afford it, absolutely, it's a must. Use it. If you can't, try and, you know, even just use your cell phone, you know, sit alongside of them, show them their body position, flip around the phone and say, hey, this is what it looks like from my perspective. So that's something that I recently started to implement a little bit.
John, when do you, with your kids up in your academy, when do you implement or when do you utilize video analysis?
I use it a lot, especially with our DA goalkeepers. You know, even with our non-DA goalkeepers, we'll go out probably twice a year, you know, and watch their games, and once in spring, once in the fall, you know, and then in training, if there's some, not all the time, but if there's certain things that we've talked about, and like Steve said, and they're just, you know, they understand, but they're just not quite getting it, you know, I'll either bring the GoPro out or I'll just take out my phone, you know, and I'll record it and then I'll cut it for them. So they, you know, again, when they see it now on video, it makes so much more sense. You know, I was always a big video guy, whether it was training or games. I wanted more and more video all the time. And so I try to use that during training, and as well as during the games. Because again, there's one thing to see something in a game with bodies and live action, and there's another thing, just like Steve said, right? All of a sudden, you know, Steve could be training me and he goes, you know, your body, you know, your set position is too wide. I understand what he says, right? I understand what he's talking about. But then when I see it in a training video of me getting set for a shot and another one, okay, that's what it looks like. This is what I need to do. So when you see it as well as verbalized, I think it locks it in for the kids. So I think it's very important for everybody.
I do too. I do too. And I'm going to put my 2 cents there in a moment. But when you guys are, Steve, let me ask you this. Is it a prerequisite for your goalkeepers that you recruit to have already been introduced to video analysis?
I wouldn't say that it's a prerequisite. You know, at the level that we're recruiting at, it's, you know, it's hard to get people that have had that proper goalie training because, you know, like the three of us now, there are some people who go out and, yeah, you can kick a ball at a goalie, and that doesn't mean that you got goalie training before. You need to have someone who has the experience, you know, much like yourselves, where you can go and be able to break that film down in training. I think it's something that I want to introduce earlier, and, you know, kind of like doing something like these Zoom meetings and the webinars and everything, where you can go and introduce them to breaking down video at a younger age, where it may not be directed towards them, but, you know, taking little clips from the Premier League or something like that and saying, oh, well, you know, the goalie made this decision. Why did he make this decision? And, you know, something like that, just to introduce the topic to them a little bit earlier, I think is beneficial.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And I asked the prerequisite question because I've seen some college coaches have that as a must, like these, because we break down a lot of film. And I'm using them, we as in them, not me.
Yeah.
You know, they use film a lot, and some kids, when they first get introduced to film, they get overwhelmed and they don't know what to do. They don't know what they're looking for, and it is a little bit of an education. And I think the earlier you can introduce video analysis, when they can look at themselves in particular in training, helps, because it's such a YouTube type generation right now that everything's on right here in between their thumbs, right? They can get on there on the ride home. They can do it when they get home. They can do it when they get home. And I think having that access and having that comfortability with the technology that you're providing, something as simple as a clip on your phone works. And I think so. I hear this. I see it. Do this. You're doing it. Your set position, hands here, and they're back by their knees. Like, okay, well, no, coach, I'm doing it. Do it one more time, and you record it, and then you show them, and they're like, "Whoa!" Like,
I didn't know I was doing that.
Yeah, exactly. Right? It happens all the time. When I feel, John, to that aha moment with kids. Yeah, I think the sooner you can start it, the better. Just like you said at the very beginning, the quicker you can educate these kids on how to properly do it, the more you have less to. If you don't, in a couple of years, you're breaking their bad habits to create new ones. And you know what I mean? And if you can teach them the right stuff early, and same thing with video analysis, if you can get them ingrained in doing that regularly, and just becoming a fan and watching games. Yeah. You know, watch the MLS, watch the Women's League, watch the English League, and really analyze the different goalkeeper types. And I tell kids all the time, pick your favorite goalie and model them. Just give yourself something to focus on, so you're doing things that you have a vision for, and you're looking to move your progress forward. And I think video goes a long way. I really do.
And there's so much easy access to it now, right? Again, not like when you and I grew up, Eric. Like, I mean, I remember my early days in the MLS. Is like, you know, Tuesday mornings, I think it was video day. And that was a VHS literally went in the data. People don't even know Steve doesn't even know what a VHS is.
I know, I'm just going to say that.
We'd watch as a team. VHS would go in, we'd watch the highlights, blah, 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 right? By the end of my career, you know, the goalkeepers cutting individual pieces, you know, and we're having individual meetings and that sort of thing. And now with Huddle and Instat and all these other options, especially that colleges and big clubs use and pro teams use, the kids can go in there and see anything they want pretty much instantaneously. Yep. You know, so they just have to want to do it. They have to want to get better. They have to want to improve. Yep. But it's like you said, it's at their fingertips. I mean, they've got their cell phone. You can get Huddle, you can get Instat, everything on your cell phone.
Agreed. And it's interesting too, because I mean, technique, it's something that I tell goalkeepers all the time. You have to be comfortable training technique every day. Because the higher levels you go, I hate to say this, the more monotonous the training gets, and it's the same thing, but you're just doing maybe a different footwork pattern, or maybe it's a pass with your foot turning into a volley, but you're practicing different skill sets, but it's the same skill sets, maybe with some different window dressing on it. So you have to like the monotony and the grind of goalkeeper training. Yeah. And I think video can help correct the things that you do all the time, so it doesn't become a repetitious habit. Yeah. And you can, if they see it, they quickly change it. Whereas sometimes they're just like, coach is just harping on me today. Yeah. No, I'm not. Here's the video to support my claim. And I think it goes a long way to eliminate a lot of negative conversations. Well, guys, listen, we have around 4 minutes left. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to pop up that screen one more time just to get a good look at it. But at the same time, I want you to give your 2 cents on technical training and just what's your overall thought process on it, the importance, and just anything that you want to leave everyone with. Steve, if I could start with you, that would be awesome.
Yeah. So myself, I'm a very technical coach. You can't teach athleticism to a kid. You can teach technical. And you know, that for me is a large portion of it. When I'm going over the technical stuff, you know, the U10 and under, probably not going to be going over a whole lot of crossing, you know, in my technical work. You have to kind of go over, you know, what the players are going to be seeing as they're playing. there's no point in teaching crossing at U10 when they're not going to see that for a couple more years. So really honing in on, things like set position, at a young age. And then as you're progressing in age and as you're progressing in skill, that's the time when you can kind of start to introduce the other things, much like the 1v1s and through balls, or, making the big saves. A lot of times in the younger age groups, the kids, they don't even really have the conscious thought process to make the big save, or in that big moment recognize what a big save really is. They're just trying to get anything that they can behind the ball. So that's my 2 cents on that. Technical ability, in my opinion, is one of the best things you can train on a consistent basis.
Nice. Right on. Thank you, Steve. John, I'll end it with you, sir.
Yeah, no, I think Steve hit the nail on the head right there. I think for me, I was always a very technical goalkeeper, again, being a little guy. But I think that's where it starts from. It's the foundation of goalkeeping. Again, I relay it to building a house. You always start with the foundation of a house. If I can make a solid foundation in every goalkeeper, whether the male or female, big, tall, whatever, all right, and then build from there, it's going to be a very good goalkeeper. And so for me, I spent a lot of time on just a simple, from set position to catching to collapse diving to, catching high balls. And then as Steve said, as the ages go up, then you start talking about, okay, dealing with crosses and dealing with that stuff, age appropriateness, if you want to call it that. But, something you hit on earlier, Eric, is even the pros do this all the time. All right. All of us do it all the time. It's just the intensity level we do it at and the consistency. That's the only thing that changes as you go up.
Yeah, I agree. And it's funny, a friend of all of ours, Todd Hopper, will say, hey, professional goalkeeping, when you find it, show it to me. Because we do the same thing at the pros that we do at the U8s. It's just a different intensity level.
Yeah, that's all it is.
It's the absolute truth, man. I think sometimes you see those YouTubers out there performing these flashy, non-relevant to game drills, and it risks injury. And I really bite my tongue when I'm talking to parents about, hey, can you show them this? And I see the video they're putting out there, and it, no, I just won't do that. I'm not going to do it for the flash. I'm going to do it for the safety of your kids and for the wellness of preserving the goalkeeper. And I think that person needs to understand the basic foundation first. And I agree with both of you. I think the foundation is the technical aspect. And there's a lot of conversation out there around what's first, technical versus tactical.
Yeah.
And I say that at the younger ages, they should be getting field experience anyway. So they'll get their tactical understanding when they're on the field, and then they put in goal, and then they can kind of all put it together. But that technical aspect is a must for anyone going in goal at the youngest ages.
Agree.
Nice. Hey, boys, this went by way too quickly. They always do. Stevie, thank you, sir, for the time today.
Yes, sir. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, and John, man, I appreciate it, my friend. I really do.
My pleasure.
Anything that we can do to support you in high-performance goalkeeping, you know where I am. Please let us know, sir.
I appreciate it, guys. Thanks for having me, and we'll speak soon.
Absolutely, guys. Thanks again for everyone else. Take care. We'll see you on your next episode. Have a good day.